video about overtraining in apnea. In the previous video, we talked about overtraining in dynamic apnea, but that can happen in static apnea as well. If you're training so much, both dynamic and static, at some point, we said in the previous video, you're gonna feel overtraining symptoms. So you will be extremely tired, short apnea capacities, painful and strong contractions way earlier than normal. Well, that's not gonna happen only in dynamic. If you're training both dynamic and static, well, you're gonna feel strong overtraining symptoms in static as well. That's for sure. That's what happened to me most of the times. In static it can be even more frustrating than in dynamic if you're overtraining, because your apnea times will be so lower than normal that you're gonna be worried and say, oh my god, how is it that possible? I'm losing all my apnea capacity. That happened to me so many times. Maybe your personal best is 8 minutes, like me. Well, it's gonna be harder if you're in full overtraining, to even reach 5. It's crazy. And your contractions usually, maybe when you're in your full potential, will start at 5 minutes. Your first contractions, like me in my case, when I'm in full potential, will start at 5 minutes, Well, when I'm in overtraining, my first contractions will be at 2 minutes. So the difference is massive. Overtraining doesn't need to be, underestimated that way, because it's something so important to analyze in our trainings. It's a factor that needs to be, of course, analyzed and keep under control. Otherwise, most of the times, during hard training periods, some really strange things will happen to you. Back in the days, when that happened to me, I didn't know anything about overtraining, and I started to lose apnea times after so many hard and training sessions. I was panicking, and it was so frustrating because I didn't know what's gonna happen to me. I didn't know what overtraining was. My static apnea really fell down instantly. 3 days before I was doing 8 minutes static apnea, but then I never rest, always training. And 3 days later, after so many other training sessions, after only 3 days later, I couldn't even reach 5 minutes. That was frustrating. I knew that was all overtraining. It was overtraining's fault. And static apnea is the same for dynamic. So strong contractions way earlier than before, extremely painful, not the capacity, lose the capacity of relaxation, lose total capacity of relaxation because of strong contractions. Normal tables then usually are easy for you, becomes extremely hard. You can lose more than 50% of your apnea capacity, which is something extremely big. It's crazy. The main solution to that is that you just need to take days off. Days off are keys to recovery and to improve in order to become even stronger. So basically, when you're overtraining, you're down, your level is low, you have no apnea capacity, but after 4 or 5 days rest, as we said in the previous video, for dynamic, same for static, this applies same for static, you're gonna get back in full shape, and you're gonna feel the positive aspects of your hard trainings you did before. You will be, gifted with amazing times if you just have the time to rest. 4 or 5 days, depending on how much strong your overtraining is. If you are in low overtraining, so if you're in overtraining but not so much strong overtraining, also 2 days off is okay. If your overtraining is stronger, 4 or 5 days rest days are necessary, to actually come back to full potential. This is something I actually realized on myself, and it's working every time. It's crazy how 5 days before, after strong training and hard training sessions every day, I'm low. I take 3-4 days off. I go back to the pool and do maybe maximum dives and go close to my personal best, because my body in those days off recovery and get out of overtraining zone, getting back to its full potential. But without those without those resting days, well, it would have been impossible to go back to full potential. I would still be in overtraining with extremely low apnea capacity and extremely low apnea times. That's why rest days during trainings period are like training days. So they are vital, just like training days. So let me repeat that basically. Days off and rest days during hard training periods have the same values of training days, because it's absolutely necessary to recover for the body. And those days off are vital for our body to recover fully. Try it by yourself.